All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully, wherever you're at, it's a nice day. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We got like 6 inches of snow here yesterday, so but it's sunny today. So again, I want to welcome everybody to the fourth annual Josh Gibson webinar series. Um, I know we have some people on here who's been participants in our webinar, so thank you for our previous speakers and presenters. Thank you for joining us today. And I want to thank you, the new people who has not been here before. Thank you for coming today. This webinar series started during the pandemic in 2020. And the main reason was because we wanted to just make sure we had something to do, number one, during the pandemic. And what better way to have different presenters and speakers talk about the Negro Leagues. Today, as my co-host is going to kick it off for us, I will do a brief intro, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows who Ted is, Ted Knorr. But before I do that, as you can mention, if you've been here to our webinars in the past, as you can see, Tom Kern is not here today, our other partner. He's on vacation somewhere in a nice, beautiful beach, enjoying his vacation with his family. So the young man I have on the screen with me today is one of our board members, Noah Castro, who will be working our chat. Noah is here in Pittsburgh with me, and he's one of our board members. So I'm glad Noah's here to take Tom's place for today to help me out. So with no further ado, today's speaker is our guy, Ted Knorr, a good friend of mine and our co-partner in this webinar series. As we all know, Ted is a founder. Hold on one second. Let me get his bio correct, which he doesn't need a bio. But Ted founded the Jerry Malloy Negro League Conference and hosted it 4 times in Harrisburg. He also founded the annual Negro League celebration in Harrisburg, Lancaster, and York, Pennsylvania. Ted was inducted into the APBA Game Company Hall of Fame in June 2022. And on August 20th, Ted's trivial team captured the title at the SaberCon 50 in Baltimore. So with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Ted Knorr. Welcome, Ted, and thank you for kicking it off.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. I'm very proud of kicking off this webinar series 4 years in a row. And Sean and I are already talking about seeing if I can bat lead off again. I get faster with age. Okay. Now we'll see how slow I can be when it comes to this kind of stuff. Okay, it's important to understand that the last victims of the segregation of baseball are us. Our knowledge of baseball in the first half of the 20th century pales in comparison with what we know of the second half and of this current century. And time is not the only issue creating a problem there. Okay, we're going to begin off with some quotes, some offerings from some ball players about the Hall of Fame. And this predates the entry of any African American except for Jackie, when Bob Feller, who also had been inducted in '62, had this to say in the Saturday Evening Post. I believe very strongly that there should be a niche in the Hall of Fame for Satchel Paige. 4 years later, at his induction, Ted Williams said, and now I hope that Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson somehow will be inducted here as symbols of the great Negro players who are not here because they were not given the chance. A few years later, Bob Peterson published his marvelous work, Only the Ball Was White, and he said that in his epilogue, recognition should be accorded the great stars of Negro baseball at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown. And then Baseball Digest in 1986 got a letter from Joe Scott of Memphis. Now, I don't know who Joe Scott was, but I have a pretty good guess. This would be Joe Burt Scott, who played 4 or 5 years for the Memphis Red Sox. Uh, and he said, I think the Veterans Committee should place all the players who played in the old Negro League from day one to 1949 in Cooperstown. Okay, now good news comes out of Cooperstown. In 1951, Satchel Paige gets a vote from a baseball writer. I don't know who it was. I'm not sure if anyone does. But this is the first Negro League player to receive a vote. And of course, 20 years later, he received 75% of the vote. The first African American honored in the Hall of Fame with a plaque, honored on a plaque, is Deacon Jones, the baseball lifer. 3 years in the majors with the White Sox, 12 years in the minors, a 318 overall organized baseball average, and then later a coach and a scout. He fits the definition of baseball lifer like few others. Oh, his plaque. In 1951, his team out of White Plains, New York, went to the American Legion Junior World Series. And he was named the most valuable player in the series, and that's how he got his name on a plaque before any other African American. Another 10 years go by, and the Hall cannot be faulted. I mean, they could have been faster than they were and put Negro Leaguers in the 50s, but their business was to honor major league players. And until 1962, no major league player had played 10 years and had been retired for 5. But to the Hall's credit, in 1962, even though no one had been put in the Hall on the first ballot since that initial 5 in 36, Jackie was elected to the Hall of Fame as on his first time in there, and so was his partner that year, Bob Feller, who was no stranger to the Negro Leagues. So Jackie's induction is one of the landmark events in Cooperstown history with regard to honoring African Americans. 4 years later, Ted Williams spoke those words I had quoted earlier, when in his speech, just a small part, but what an impact. It's still talked about today. He stressed the need. He hoped that there would be room in Cooperstown to honor, and he mentioned two, Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson, but he saw them as symbolizing the entire Negro Leagues. And I'm not sure in 66 he viewed 37, which is where we're at now. And of course, before I'm done, I'm going to give another number for where we need to get. In 1969, Roy Campanella became the second player, not the second African American, although that was true also, but he's the second player who debuted on April 15, 47 or after to be in the Hall. So the first two major league players from the integrated era put into the Hall were both African American and both Negro Leaguers. Okay, now let's see if I can get my notes back. There they be. The Hall of Fame then made their big turn in 1971, and it wasn't without some hiccups. They began to induct 9 Negro League players. And let me just get another screen. Unfortunately, I don't have written notes. I'm trying to operate, and I don't have a computer technology to be able to split my screen. Okay. Up until a month before Satchel's induction in August of 71, they were actually going to put the Negro League players on a plaque or in a separate room or somehow differentiated from the plaque gallery where they belong. They got that hurdle overcome just in time, because I'm not sure Satchel would have showed up. But you can see, and I don't have these guys in order, they're in a batting order. The first 9 that were put in make a lineup. So I have Cool leading off, and then Monty, Charlie, Josh, Buck, El Maestro, Pop Lloyd, Judy Johnson, and the great Satchel Paige. That would do pretty well against any 9 you want to find on the white side of the plaque gallery. There is another hiccup there at the end of the term, when unfortunately the panel that selected these 9, led by Monty Irvin, voted to disband. Their job was done. They had put 9 in. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed as we move on here. Now, okay, in 1981, the Veteran Committee, which took over that responsibility, elected Rube Foster. And in 1987, Ray Dandridge went in. Now, between 77 and 94 was 17 elections. Only these 2 had went in. And the Hall of Fame realized that more Negro Leaguers were required. So in short order, and with an affirmative action plan to put in 1 Negro Leaguer annually, which I thought was, after doing 2 in 17 years, I didn't look at this as a quota in any way, shape, or form. Some do. But they put in Leon Day, Willie Foster, Willie Wells, Bullet Joe Rogan, and Smokey Joe Williams. And then they decided they weren't going to have a hiccup this time. They extended it 2 more years, putting in Turkey Stearns and Hilton Smith. Now, here's where I have to give us a little thinking project. What if, instead of doing what they were about to do, which is great, what if they would have continued this policy of putting 1 Negro Leaguer in every year? There's an upside to that. Again, I'm not sure which was right, but they could have given the living player a chance to speak. They could give families a chance to speak. And if they had have continued ever since 01, year after year, they would have hit 37 by, I think, 2021. So that would mean we'd have the same 37 that are in now, plus, let's look at the last ballot. Maybe Vic Harris would be in. Maybe John Donaldson would be in. Maybe George Scales would be in. And then either Dick Redding or Grant Johnson. Those are the last 5 on the 2021 ballot. Okay, now what? There, I've lost my notes again. Let's go without them. I'll come back if I miss anything. All right. At the Harrisburg Malloy in the year 2000, it was announced, although it had been publicly announced prior, but I certainly hadn't heard it. I heard it first from Larry Lester and Dick Clark at the podium in Harrisburg at the conference that year. Major League Baseball was going to put up $250,000. The Hall of Fame was going to select a group of researchers, and Negro League statistics were going to be further explored, as was biographies, or a written narrative. The 3 leading competitors for that, and I'm very pleased to say I was part of a 40-person group called the Negro League Writers and Authors Group, that really was the Sabre Negro League Committee, but we couldn't use that name because our competitors were Sabre, led by President of Sabre Jim Riley, himself a Negro League researcher, and the Negro League Baseball Hall of Fame, led by John Hallway, with Buck O'Neill on that team. So I think we were David. They were the 2 Goliaths, and the Negro League Researchers and Authors Group got that $250,000 grant, and for the next 5 or 6 years, developed what Seamheads today is the caretaker for, and that is the source for Negro League statistics. A book came out of it also, and and 17 Negro League players were voted in the Hall in July of 2006. 22 remained on that ballot. And those 22, I think, should be considered this December, but I'm getting ahead of myself. 15 years go by. Here's another hiccup with no further action. And Jeff Idelson was the president of the Hall at the time, and he was very open to, if new information shows up, we can get, the door's not closed. And I'm very happy to report that turns out he was right. Unfortunately, he's no longer there, but I do think we have very good staff at the Hall of Fame right now. Here's another hiccup. This is an unusual one, and perhaps it only bothers me. But if you notice here, I do refer with these obscure numbers. After 2006, there were 35 personages in the Hall due to Negro League play. 29 were players. Well, in 2021, Buck O'Neill and Bud Fowler were added. Now we're up to 37, but we only have 28 players. Now, to be honest and to be fair, I've discussed this with the Hall, and maybe I should. It could be a typo, but for the past 2 or 3 yearbooks and on the internet, Frank Grant is, with no change in his write-up, is now an executive. So I'm going to use that 28 number instead of 29 because it works to my benefit. Okay, and there you see my punchline. The panel, and what's it called? Classic Baseball Era panel. They'll be meeting in December with 8 additional candidates. I wouldn't expect 4 to be Negro Leaguers, but maybe. In fact, I don't want that panel to even meet. I'm going to have a recommendation in a bit. I hate to punish these players, punished by segregation during their careers, by integration now. The Negro Leaguers got to be judged against Negro Leaguers. And the best of them, just like in the other side of the line, need to be put in the Hall of Fame. I hope I'm clear. Okay, moving right along. And this shows the problem here. There are 153 Hall of Fame players. I'm only talking about players now, that earned their plaques under segregation. And just a note for Gary Gillette, who's here, I used to use 167 here. So the percentage of Negro Leaguers has risen a little bit. 14 of those 167, Berra, Musial, Williams, Spahn, even Early Wynn, who debuts in 39, they actually earn their bones, or at least have a majority of their plate appearances after Jackie crosses the line. So I've moved them from my perspective until the other side of the demarcation line. But there's 125 traditional Major League Hall of Famers from this group. There's 28, as we just mentioned, Negro Leaguers. That's 18%. I think that's just on its own too low. And the fact that there's 4.5 traditional Major League players for every 1 Negro League player, to me, I mean, and I'm going to look for you guys to answer this, is that equality? Is it equity? Is it fair, or is it just? I don't think so. And I'm not so sure an 8-person ballot with 3 or 4 Negro Leaguers competing against players that played in the majors till the 90s, or the 80s rather. I don't think that's where we want to go. That's where we're going right now. Now, Gary Gillette in the audience, Sean Gibson in the audience, and myself, in order to influence the 21 vote, we put together a poll, and I'm very pleased. 80 researchers, artists, writers, fans with Negro League expertise voted. And you can see the top 10 in that poll. The mean average was 29 individuals. So 80 people on average, they voted for 29 players or players and personages, executives, umpires, managers. They voted for 29 individuals on average. 23 of them were players. Now, the median is interesting. That means there was as many people that voted for 8 or less as voted for 8 or more, which surprised me. In the range, one voter said 3 more should go in. Another voter, and I will not tell you his name, but he may be in this room. He certainly was invited. He marked off 111 of the 116 on the ballot. So obviously there's mixed opinions even within the Negro League community. Looking at the top 10, I was a little embarrassed. I can't help but think some voters must have been influenced by my favorite player, because Rap Dixon ended up number 1. Even I don't have him number 1. In fact, Adam Dorowski just spoke at the Pod of Fame within the past week, and he's very high on John Beckwith, and that's my favorite candidate for the Hall in terms of deserving. And right after Beckwith, Gus Greenlee was 4th, and he's my choice for a non-player. That list shows you the percentages that they received in that particular poll, but I have 3 other polls to the right to show you that maybe I wasn't that influential on Rap, because the Negro League Committee had a poll in April of that year, and Dick Lundy led that one with 100%. But Rap Dixon and Dick Redding were tied for 2nd. And you can see in the light green, there are 7 players that got 75% in that poll. I've taken out, of course, Minoso, Fowler, and O'Neill in both of those. 3 years earlier, in December of 2018, the Negro League Baseball Museum announced a centennial team. Again, maybe I wasn't so influential in the 42 for 21 vote, because Rap Dixon is the only position player named to that team that is yet to be inducted. There's 32 players and owners and managers on that team. 29 are in the Hall. These 3 are not. The other 2 are pitchers, Dick Redding and John Donaldson. And the last poll that I'm showing is the Hall of Fame vote in December of 21, the one that we hoped to influence with the 42 for 21 poll, but we were a little late. Dick Redding got less than 25%, shame on them, as did Home Run Johnson. But both Vic Harris and John Donaldson made a strong run, and they certainly are probably the 2 leading candidates based on their track record. Donaldson got 50% of the vote, and Vic Harris got 12 out of 16. He missed by 4. Okay, now this screen is a comparison between the segregated era, 1871 to 1946, and the integrated era, 1947 to the present day. Now, by no means was baseball integrated in the late 40s and throughout the 50s, or I should say fully integrated, but the door was open, at least. And you can see there's 153 Hall of Famers that debuted in the segregated era. There's 120. It's actually 106 plus 14 that debuted earlier but made their bones after 47. There's 125 white players from the segregated era. That's 82%. Whereas with a relatively even playing field, it's not even in 2024, but with much more, there was no fair play before. African Americans were not allowed to cross that line. But since 47, fully 39% of the Hall of Famers have been players of color. Now, I just want to look at these three factors. African Americans, which of course make up the majority of the players of color, although less so today than 15 years ago, but they still only draw from 10 to 12% of the US population. Therefore, that 18% really isn't bad from a population perspective. And they're still in that 10 to 12% range. So that's really not changed. But these next two factors, one adds players of color in today's pool, but the other subtracts it. The adding, we now have many more non-United States players of color from Japan and from the South, the islands, from around the world. And so that's an additional, so that's fueling that 39%. But before 47, now I'm being a little strict here. There was no NBA, and the NBA that there was integrated in 1950 or 51. The NFL was integrated early, but then it went through its Jim Crow era, and it had just recently become integrated again in 47, a few years before that. So that subtracts from, oh, I'm sorry, that subtracted then. I'm sorry, it didn't subtract at all then, because it was not a place where baseball players could go. But it subtracts from today's, especially African American. We wonder why there's not as many playing baseball. And of course, it's not this simple, Ted. But it is, there's a lot of guys 6'4" and under that are in the NFL, not just African American. Elway, Marino, who am I missing? Bo Jackson, for that matter, Deion Sanders, that could have been full-time baseball players. So I don't think it's population that's driving the difference between 39% and 18%. So here's some food for thought, and then I'm going to shut up, and I hope to hear you guys. Once again, you look at these same numbers. What I want to do, and I hope I can make some sense here, there's 125 white Hall of Famers debuting before 47. Oh, whoa, is what I call this particular thought. Why shouldn't there be 125 players of color? After all, they not only had the same statistics as a group, but every compilation of games between so-called Negro League players and so-called Major League players, the Negro League players win more than their fair share. And we can discuss that, because my personal belief, it was a 50-50 split. But if it was a 50-50 split, why don't we have a 50-50 split in Hall of Famers? 125 on one side and 125 on the other side. That would require 97 new Negro League Hall of Famers. And just to give you an idea what that would mean, that would reach the whole way down to Nick Stanley and his 102 ERA plus, and Bill Hoskins. Hoskins, of course, is a borderline candidate in my book. But that's not happening. I don't even argue for that. But if you use the performances of African Americans and Latinos, 39% of the Hall are players of color. If you try to raise those 28 up to where they make up 39% of the pool of Hall of Famers, it would take a total of 81. That's what that 81 means on the chart. That would be 53 new. And let's see how far down we reach now. This is almost doable, just to give you an idea. I don't advocate for it, but Leroy Matlock is a bona fide Hall of Fame contender. He's 121 OPS plus. There are many names. I think Steve Carlton is at that range. I can't read my notes, and I'm not going to worry about it. But and on the other side, the position player side, the 81st player down is Frank Duncan. Now, he should go in probably as a baseball lifer, but even as a catcher, his 85 OPS plus is 2 points higher than Ray Shaw. And don't misread me. We shouldn't be putting people in just because they're better than someone that is in. I'm not advocating for Frank Duncan, although I think he'd make a good Hall of Famer, not as a player. But I'm just pointing out a couple things. Okay, this last one, and I think, not quite ready to shut up. But this last one, I call it the double reduction. There's 125 white players in the Hall prior to the integration. There's 81 Negro League players if you use that 39% to fuel your decision making. One more reduction. Between 1920 and 1948, there's only 13 Negro League teams on average, where there's 16 in the Major League. So I'm going to use that quotient, 13 divided by 16, multiply 81 by that, and you get 65. I personally think if there were 65 Negro League players in the Hall, it'd be a better world. That would require 37 more players. That's why I was running at the mouth earlier about 37. Here's the two players that you would find if you go down 65 deep into the list of Negro Leaguers by WAR. The pitcher's Harry Salmon. Now he's only got a 115 ERA plus. I'm not saying he should belong, but he's certainly in the neighborhood. And the batter is Fats Jenkins, and I am saying he belongs. So the last point here, you can see I've crossed it off because 81 might be too much. I don't know. 125, I think, would be too much. But 28, I can say for sure, is too low. All right. And now I am at the end. So I'm going to give you my recommendation for what should happen this December, and then open the floor up for first some written, and then maybe some, maybe I can hear your voices. But I'd like to see for this year's vote in the December winter meetings of the Major League Baseball, I want to see a separate Negro League era ballot, separate from the classic baseball era ballot. And again, punished by segregation in life, let's not punish them by integration in the afterlife. I want 16 people on the Negro League era committee, and they should be knowledgeable, every single one of them, not 5 of 16, but just like 2006, they should know what they're talking about. The committee will meet every 3 years. I'd prefer every one, but I'm trying to be reasonable. So they're going to meet every 3 years, just like the classic baseball era in 24, 27, 30. They should get their job done by 30. For this year's ballot, I'd like to see all 21 names that were on the ballot in 06. There was 20 remaining from 06, and then Vic Harris joined the group in 21. I'd like to see all 21 of those names on the ballot. And then the committee, just like they did in 06, will consider all 21 candidates, and they can vote for as many as they think belong. So right now, the rules say they can only vote for 3, for crying out loud. So I would like to see the committee to consider all 21, up or down vote. Those that get 75% come in, and those that come short of that will be on the ballot the next time. If everyone was elected here of these 21, we would be up to 46 players and 12 managers, umpires, pioneers, or executives. And then at that pace, we wouldn't need 2030 if the Negro League committee would do its job in 27. So that's my Pollyanna-esque idea. I want to thank a few people, and then I'm going to shut up or try to. I want to thank the following researchers and historians for inspiring parts of this talk and providing resources for this presentation. Bob Peterson's Only the Ball Was White, published in 1970. Bill James' wonderful critique of the Hall of Fame, Politics of Glory, 1994. Then a couple of podcasters here. Dan Diadonna gave a great speech in 2020 to the Detroit Stars Centennial Conference. I wasn't there because it was all this was 2020. It was all virtual, but I was in the audience. And then Adam Darowski, I referred to him earlier. He put in a good spot on the Pod of Fame. He's in the audience. I hope to hear from him. And then finally, three authors of what I consider the three current most influential books on the topic. Todd Peterson's The Negro Leagues Were Major League, which was published in January of 2020, and 50 years after the Negro Leagues weren't even considered to be considered as a major league. They were put in the Hall of Fame. I don't mean to give Todd all the credit, but the book certainly was influential. Stephen Green's, I hope he's in the audience, but I didn't see him before I started blabbing. His book, The Negro Leaguers in the Hall of Fame, that also came out later in 2020, is another good one to tell you about the history of the Hall and the Negro Leagues. And then finally, and I'd love it if it's 5 o'clock his time, he's over there in Britain, Phil Lee, whose new book, Black Stats Matter, is another one that's everybody should read these three in quick fashion. I'm done. All right, Sean, what do you got?
All right, Ted. Well, again, thanks, Ted. Great presentation as always. Hopefully, we have some great questions. So today, if you've been to our webinars in the past, usually we have everybody muted, and we have you put your questions into the chat or the Q&A. But Ted wanted to do live questions today, so we'll do it this way. If you have a question for Ted, you can probably raise your hand. I can call on you, or Noah can call on you, or I know there's a couple questions in the chat, in the Q&A. We can start with those first. Noah, if you want to read those, I think it's like 2 or 3 questions in the Q&A. Once we read those and get answers to those, then we'll go with live questions for Ted.
Sounds great. All right, guys. So again, my name's Noah Castro. If you guys joined late, I'm a member of the Josh Gibson Foundation Executive Committee or Executive Board, and it's great to be with you all today. So just a few comments there. So a couple from Bob Poet. He had said, "Hi, a tip of cap to all the friends out there," and then he said, "Good idea. Spoke with Peter Gorton yesterday. He said he'd be happy to see you later." Peter just mentioned about can be the recording be emailed to you. And then David Metter, he had said, do you think there are, or do you who do you think the top umpire candidates are for the Negro Leagues there, Ted?
Okay, well, on that one, the low-hanging fruit is Bob Motley. He was associated with the Negro League Baseball Museum. His son is very active in all facets of promoting the Negro Leagues. He was involved with the current movie that's out. And Bob himself was, I think, the last living Negro League umpire. I think he'd be a good choice. He just, to go back to the 42 for 21 poll, Bob all but makes the top 42. So he's right there on the periphery. I think he'd be a good candidate. My favorite, because he was often in Harrisburg, was John Craig. But the Negro League umpires, by putting Motley in, we open a door and we put a spotlight on them that other names will pop up over the years.
And just real quick, for the comment about the recording, yes, Ted will have a copy of the recording once we're done. and you can just email Ted to get a copy of the recording, and whoever needs a copy of the recording.
Yeah.
Ted will have access to the recording.
And my email, although I'm retired 13 years, but I keep pretty busy. But if you want a copy, send me an email, Papa Bell, PAPABELL at AOL.com.
Okay. All right. So this is how we all do it. If you're not speaking, please stay on mute. But if anybody has a question for Ted right now, you can raise your hand, or just somebody can just okay. So Max, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, Ted. My name's Max Almenas Martinez. My uncle, actually, my grandfather and his three brothers were professional baseball players in the Dominican Republic, and one of them was one of my uncles was Horatio Martinez, Rabbit Martinez, as he was known. He played with the New York Cubans from the 1935 to 1947 when they won the Negro League World Series, and then went on to become a scout for the New York Giants, which became the San Francisco Giants. And he signed Juan Marichal, Felipe Alou, and his brothers, Manny Mota. That's just to name a few. I'm sure most people in this call know who they are. But a lot of people don't know that he also was one of the founding fathers of the first Professional Baseball Players Association in the Dominican Republic, which was formed in 1951, at a time when the sport had been basically shut down for 17 years by the dictator Rafael Trujillo. And so him and Enrique Lantigua, who also played in the New York Cubans, with a few other people, went around the island and garnered support, both, financially, and basically made it happen. And then a year later was when LIDOM, which is the current professional league in Dominican Republic, was formed as well. And so both the union and the professional league are the same ones that were formed when they started this again back in 51. Just to speed up to 2006, my uncle Horatio Martinez was one of the players that was elected it was in the 2006 election, or actually was it 2005 the election was, and then 2006 was when they made the final choices. So he didn't make the final cut, but he was a 5-time All-Star player for the New York Cubans. He also played and coached in not just Dominican Republic, but Cuba, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, and Panama. And like I said, with everything he did with the union, to help save the sport, and then signing Juan Marichal and Felipe Alou, who some of them had, even some of their children became professional baseball players, which speaks to the legacy. I was inspired by all this to produce a documentary based on the four brothers, with a focus more so on Horatio, because he went the furthest, but just to give the world a view of what the history, the pioneers, like the four Martinez brothers, contributed, along with all the Negro League players. I felt that this was important to share the story with the world. So I'm currently in production. We've already interviewed a number of Negro League family members, including Belinda Manning, the daughter of Max Manning. We're in talks with Larry Doby Jr. and Monty Irvin's daughter, Pamela. So I don't know if that was much of a question as it was
No, but it
just
was
telling you what I'm doing. I apologize if I should have formed that in a question, but I just wanted to share that because I guess my question is, my uncle, even though he was a 5-time All-Star player in the East-West games, in the end, for whatever reason, and I know there were a few years that that kind of fell out in terms of the box scores because, as you know, Alex Pompez, who was his mentor and obviously worked with him, they both were the ones that went on to scout for the San Francisco Giants. At one point, Alex had to leave the country because he was running numbers in Harlem, and the feds were on to him, and so the Cubans had no games for like 2 or 3 years, and so that and some other factors contributed to his final averages not being maybe I guess Hall of Fame worthy, but given all the contributions that he made, not just a player, but as a scout, as a coach, as a mentor to a lot of these players from the Dominican Republic that not only didn't know what racism was, they didn't speak the language. So it was a huge transition for them, both on and off the field when they came to this country. Are those things that the Hall of Fame would take into consideration? Or do they just strictly look at the numbers in terms of, inducting somebody?
They definitely don't just look at the numbers. I'm not sure, because the problem, and this is the problem with my whole premise. I think there should be 65 total Hall of Fame players, meaning 37 new. Now, he wouldn't qualify for that, although he's a teammate of Rap Dixon's in 1935 on the Cubans.
Right.
I'm a big Rabbit Martinez fan, but and he did get votes. I think he got 6 votes, which really that's 6 out of 80 voters. He got attention in the 42 for 21 poll. And as you mentioned, he is in the top 100, according to the Hall, because he was on their nominated list that they whittled down to 39 in 06. And then you add to that those other factors, signing Marichal and the Alous, you start to get a case. Now, how good, how bad, that's for others to decide. But until you get those 65 players and another 17 or 18 executive manager types, I think Rabbit Martinez is in that, assuming all of them go in, I think you have a nice case. But there's work to be done with even bigger cases.
Right.
Look
So
forward
I guess
to your movie.
What's that?
Look forward to your movie, though.
Well, I'm hoping I can interview you at some point. So I'm just throwing that out there. If you're not camera shy.
I'm not.
But do you think the documentary will better his chances?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Was that a yes? I couldn't
He
hear
said
you.
yes. He said yes.
It was certainly.
Oh, certainly. Okay. All right. I appreciate that, Ted. And Ted, where are you based? Just so I know.
I'm in Harrisburg, PA, but you have my email, and I think I'm looking at yours. We definitely got to talk.
Yeah, definitely. That would be great. And I'm in Fort Lee, New Jersey. So
PA
we're
not far.
No, not far at all. That's such a good drive away, and I'd be happy to come out there and meet with you and discuss it further.
Sounds like a winner.
All right, thanks. Any other
Thank you.
questions? Raise your hand, please. Adam?
Yeah, Ted, thanks so much for this. This was great. I love this subject matter, and you bring such a unique perspective to it. So I want to commend you on the discussion here. This was great. One of the things that I've run into when making cases for additional Negro League candidates, which I agree with you that there are many, many more out there, but it's tough when we're we're comparing the statistics to an era of white baseball that is grossly overpopulated in the Hall of Fame. And I was just kind of curious how you reconcile that, because what's difficult is we obviously want them to be properly populated in the Hall of Fame compared to their era, but then their era is already grossly overpopulated, which if we then did that, then maybe we need to open up additional eras to more Hall of Famers, which personally I think would be a great idea, because then suddenly somebody like Felipe Alou, who has come up a couple times, I think he would rise above that bar, and you open up to so many more interesting cases for modern players, which I love the idea of celebrating more players. So I'm just kind of curious what thoughts you've had around this issue of like the Frankie Frisch era overpopulating the Hall of Fame, and maybe making this a harder case to make.
It doesn't bother me in the least. I mean, I think our bottom lines are the same, but the fact that there's 167 actually, Hall of Famers debuting before Jackie, and there's only 106 after. There's more coming. That has nothing to do with keeping the Negro Leaguers out. It's going to widen that gap, and I like your view on the back end. It opens up Dave Parker and Felipe Alou's a good one. I love the way you handle it at the back end. The front end doesn't bother me at all. It's overpopulated with traditional major leaguers, but it's not at all overpopulated. That's why I like to use ratios, even though it turns some people off. They say, judge these people individually. We're going to do that. We're not going to put the first 100 Negro League players we find on a page in the hall. We're going to put the first, in my case, 37 Negro League players based on merit.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree with that as well. I've just run up against it a little bit in the past, and just glad to have someone else thinking about it in a similar way. A follow-up, if I'm allowed, is when comparing to the modern era of like 39% of players of color after integration, I just want to note that in a lot of cases, we also then have to think about the players from Latin America who either barely played or never played in the Negro Leagues as well, and they should also be considered in that group. And, just 6 names from that group that I think are interesting and some did play a short time in the Negro Leagues. From Cuba, we have Silvio Garcia, who I think was just a tremendous shortstop. Lazaro Salazar, a two-way player. Ramon Bragana was a wonderful pitcher from Cuba who pitched a lot in Mexico rather than the Negro Leagues. From the Dominican Republic, I think Totelo Vargas is, sneaky one of the all-time greats that we're not talking about enough. He played everywhere in the Western Hemisphere. And then from Puerto Rico, I think Pancho Coimbre and Perucho Cepeda, who never played in the Negro Leagues, are a couple really interesting names that enter the chat when we expand to this level.
Yeah. And to me, and I'm going to be honest here, the National Baseball Hall of Fame honors major league players. Expanding that is another issue, especially now that Major League Baseball has defined the Negro Leagues for the, between 20 and 49 as major league, and work's not done there. My concern is to honor those players. This is what makes Frank Grant such an interesting situation. He was the only player in the hall who didn't play in the majors after December 16, 2020, of course. But now he's no longer considered a player. So every player in the hall, this would, specifically address Perucho Cepeda, every player in the hall played in what's now called Major League Baseball. I'm not opposed to expanding that definition, but I think we got to take care of the Major League Baseball as it's currently defined before we go that route. But I hear you.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, I'd like to say something if I could.
Yep, go ahead, Gary.
Hey, Ted, great presentation. You know, it's admirable how much work you put into this and how you know your stuff. Just two things. One is that the 2020 thing was not the Detroit Star Centennial Conference. That was in 2019, which you were at. It was a symposium I sponsored on the Negro League Centennial, and it was online because of the pandemic. So, but the important point is, I would never say that a Negro Leagues committee should be disbanded. There should be a Negro Leagues committee reviewing the records of Negro Leaguers and other black ball players, as long as they're still picking over the white guys pre-47. I mean, if they're still picking over guys who've been picked over a dozen times and considering them for admission into the hall for immortality, they can still be looking at Negro Leaguers, because the Negro Leagues, and as Adam pointed out, the Latin League, et cetera, there's still scholarship being done and new evidence being unearthed. That's not true for the white leagues. So that's my only critique of your excellent presentation.
Yep. And to that point, let me be clear on that. I was saying once we got to 65 players, and that would mean an additional 18 or so executives, umpires, managers.
Right.
And I guess I did say we could disband the committee.
Yeah.
But what I really meant is we could put Negro Leagues in the same category as 19th century. The door's not closed. But if we can get 37 more Negro League players in, plus executives, managers, and whatnot, they're going to shut me up. But I'm glad they're not going to shut everyone up, Gary.
Well, I'm just saying that, as you know, I mean, they're still picking over the scrap heap on the white players, and of course Frankie Frisch be damned. You know, there are many many in there. They probably don't deserve to be in there, but they're in there, and no one's throwing them out.
Yep.
And
that's
you know,
Gary.
We should, as Adam says, we should be honoring a lot more people. The Hall of Fame doesn't say it's a National Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. It's a National Baseball Hall of Fame. But check out how much attention they pay to anything else besides Major League Baseball. You know, the APBA, there's no woman in there in the Hall of Fame. Broadcasters, they have their own quote wing, which is really like a walk-in closet. You know, they're not. I mean, I would put Ernie Harwell in the Hall of Fame in a heartbeat, and Vince Scully. And I would put Bill James in, and Pete Palmer. I mean, they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but it's really the National Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, not the National Baseball Hall of Fame. And it could be the International Baseball Hall of Fame with a little bit of work, and it should be. Speech done.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Sean.
Next question. Jeff? Jeff? Who has their hand up? Raise your next person.
That's Jeff, yeah.
I like the proposals you made for the changes in the committee for December, but can they actually happen, especially in separate committees? Have you contacted the hall about making those changes?
No. I do anticipate sending this to them along with a couple other written notes. I think the changes are reasonable. In fact, Jeff, I expect, and again, maybe I'm Pollyanna, I don't think anything I said today is new ground. I think it's similar to what they're going to announce in May when they have their East-West Classic. Now, I have no inside information there. That's my naivete. I can't believe they're going to have an election as they currently have proposed.
Yeah, I'm going up to that Classic.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah, I've been going up to the Classic for like 12 years now, and it's good that I like the change. They're having a lot more big names people coming up for this one.
Well, I'll be there for the symposium and for the Malloy, but not for the Classic.
Yeah, they have 9 Hall of Famers, and the extra players are more well known this year than other years.
Yep.
All right, we got a couple. We got time for like one more last question. Any other questions? Okay. Well, Ted, great job. Thank you. I want to thank. Oh,
there's Max.
Max, this is a short question, right? Max?
Yes.
Okay.
Very quick. if anybody, it's more of a statement. If anybody has any memorabilia photos, I know somebody said in the chat that Ted has a picture of Rabbit Martinez. If anybody else has any photos or memorabilia of the Martinez brothers, especially Horatio Rabbit Martinez, we really appreciate it for the documentary. And of course, we'd give you credit or, work something out. But I just wanted to put that out there because, as you guys know, it's very difficult to find any kind of media of these players from the 1930s and 40s. So just wanted to put that out there.
All righty. Thank you, Mac. Well, again, thanks everybody. Our next presenter will be Phil Dixon in April. Phil hasn't given us a date yet, but we'll send something out to you guys soon before the end of the month. But hope to see everybody back in April and hear Phil Dixon. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. You guys have a great day and a great rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Great presentation.
Hey, Sean, you still there?
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, would it be possible to set up an interview with you for the documentary in the coming weeks or months?
I can send you my email. We can try to work something out.
Okay, that's great. Where are you based?
I'm in Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. That's great. Actually, my uncle played a lot of games in Pittsburgh, and one of the best pictures, I think the best picture of him playing was actually taken at Forbes Field in I want to say it was like 1945. It's actually featured at the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh. So yeah, I would definitely love to talk to you because my uncle played with I think is your grandfather, Josh.
Great.
Yeah, he played with him many games, especially in the All-Stars. So
we'll definitely talk.
all right, sounds great. And thank you so much to you and to Ted for putting this together.
Thank you.
You guys are doing great things. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Eddie. Eddie Bedford.
I think is that it? Is somebody still on?
Eddie's still on. I'd like to say hello if I could. Can you light him up?
Yeah, there you go. He can talk. He's got to unmute himself.
It's really good to see you.
Good to see you, Eddie.
My email said it started at 12 noon.
It did. Oh, Central Time.
Yeah.
No, Eastern Time. It should have been Eastern. It should have been Eastern time.
That's why I'm tuning in late because I was sitting here. I've been sitting here saying I'm waiting because I wish I had signed on sooner. But hey, at least I'm here now, right?
Yeah. Where you at, Eddie?
Naperville, Illinois, 30 miles west of Chicago.
Yeah, you're an hour behind us. So yeah, when you got the time, so it's 12. It's always 12 Eastern.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Sean, just so you know, Eddie's from Chicago, and he's hosted the Malloy twice, and he's going to be hosting a panel at this year's Cooperstown conference.
Okay, great. Well, I'll get a chance to maybe meet him in Cooperstown if I come.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Unless you see him first, then you can, go around the corner.
I spoke with my daughter just a little while ago, Ted, and it seems as though the youngest, Jessica, is going to come with me.
Good.
Good. And also Jimmy Stacchero, who is Minnie Minoso's president of the fan club, is coming.
Okay. Great.
Do you know the hotel we're going to be staying at just yet?
Well, Eddie, I do. And the answer to that is there is none.
Okay.
You gotta be, I'd start today to find hotel space. I will send you where I'm staying. I'm 4 miles out of town or something.
That's last time we were there. That's about where the hotels were. Just about 4 or 5 miles south.
I will, I'll send it to you.
Okay. I did look this morning for hotels. So now I know I'll just
Yeah.
start to look later on today.
The conference is going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I'll start looking for bed and breakfast. Okay.
Alrighty.
All right.
Look forward to meeting you, Eddie. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sean, I had met you years ago. I don't know which conference it was, but when we
Maybe
see
maybe the one
face-to-face-
in Pitt. I mean, because I've been to the one in Pittsburgh twice,
Yep.
and then maybe probably here in Pittsburgh.
Okay. Okay.
I think that was it, Eddie. That was the last one you were at, I think.
Well, it was Detroit.
Okay, yeah, I was just at Detroit last year.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
last year. About 8 years ago, 10 years ago.
2013. Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
or something
Yep.
like that.
Yep. Okay. Okay.
Thanks,
All right.
Eddie. Have a good
See
day.
you, Eddie.
All right. Take care.
All right.
All right, Sean.
Well, Ted, we finished it up. We did pretty good
Yeah.
with Tom. Let me end this.